are all set.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this special meeting of the Hsd School Board on Tuesday, October 20th. Before we begin, I'll read our COVID statement. As chair of the Hsd School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting by dialing the following phone number, 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom telephonetically. Instructions have also been provided on the district website at hampsteadschools.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email hmstechnology@hampsteadschools.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Melissa, will you please call the roll attendance?
Yes. Megan Malcolm?
Here, I'm alone in this room as well as this house.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here, I'm alone in the room. There are other members of my family in the house.
David Smith?
I'm here alone in the room with others in the house.
Jim Sweeney?
Here, alone in the room, others in the house also.
Karen Yusenka?
Here, alone in my office, there are other members of the family in the home.
And executive consultant, Dr. Earl Metzler?
Present. I'm in my home office, and there are other members of my family in the house.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, we have a slight agenda change. I am going to be giving each board member who would like it some time for comments regarding situation that transpired over the last few days. Mr. Sweeney, I believe you would like to go first.
Right. I'm going to read something I wrote. You might have already heard about the post on Facebook by Hampstead mother and fellow community member, Carolyn Morse, calling out fellow community members to personally stalk my children and school board members last week. This could not go unaddressed because of the potential harm she has placed on my family, as well as the family members of 3 other school board members. She, along with moderators of the group, need to know this behavior is unequivocally unacceptable and appalling. This is endangerment to the family she sought information on, including my own. Regardless of the public office I hold, no one has the right to infringe on the privacy rights and safety of my family, and especially my children. She has crossed a major line with the latest affront and request to further her own agenda in disparaging the school board and its recent decisions. I will read you the post that she made. I will take some information out because I'm not going to go the route she did and mention some of my school board members. I will mention only one because she allowed me to. This is what Carolyn wrote on this posting board. It's a new board in town, and I'm not going to give them any play by saying their name. This is what Carolyn Morse wrote. We need to publicly recognize the hypocrisy that 2 of the current board members that voted for the 6 feet distance have their kids enrolled at a certain school where there is no distancing, masked, and they share toys and other things. I think we should call them out. School member A and school member B. School member C doesn't have their kids there either, doesn't have their kids there. If anyone knows the childcare situation of your Sanker or Sweeney, that could help too. Just putting that out there. Do we have to worry about some Facebook crazy trying to get a gotcha moment of catching one of my kids, one of our kids with their mask down, or a daycare that doesn't have a 6-foot rule, or maybe someone in the market that wants to take a picture of our kids so they can post it on Facebook that it can say gotcha to the school board. You voted for 6 feet, but your kid had their mask down. This was wrong on so many levels. I am sad that in a time when we find ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic and such hardship, any member of my community would see so little value in the privacy and safety of my and our children. What does this say to people looking to move to Hampstead? So many say they have moved to this town because schools in our community is part of our school. But your actions have hurt this community, schools, and children. What you have done is shown people that this might not be the town they should move to. And most importantly, what does this example does it set for our children? We have the ABC club in some of our schools, anti-bullying club, and here we are with parents endangering students to bully school board member parents. She's done a great disservice to this community. The board, teachers, admin, parents, and children. It's sad that this behavior was also supported by others on that posting board from our community. To imagine anyone would be okay with this sort of infringement on privacy, tracking the location of our children, reporting on them is despicable. You should all be asking yourselves, how would you have responded had someone put a call to stalk your families and right to privacy, your spouses? This went beyond kids. It went to spouses, mothers-in-laws, fathers-in-laws. What's next? Is it the teachers or unions, if they don't vote a certain way, calling them out and their children? You better not. I have 2 more things to say. Global pandemic, 220,000 Americans dead, 1.12 million humans on the earth dead. And you feel the need to call on my fellow neighbors to seek out information about my children, about our children, because I'm thinking about keeping your children safe and voting for a 6-foot guideline? Let's think about that for a second. COVID infections going up all around the world, the US, the state of New Hampshire, 220,000 Americans dead. And I'm taking a vote to keep your children safe. And you have the damn nerve to try to get info about my kids. Shame on me, shame on you for taking such an underhand and offensive approach to selfishly fulfill your own personal agenda under the guise of doing what's best for all our kids. What a crock. Shame on you. This disgusting act has wasted precious time that should have been allocated to reopening plan. All it entails to ensure our children can return safely. Did that backfire on the taxpayers of Hampstead? If anyone dares to go after information of my children, I am putting you on notice. This is not a threat of violence. It's a promise. I will call you out, report it to the police. I will legally go after you and hold you responsible for all your inappropriate actions. I ran for the school board for your kids. I will not let people like you use them against us. That's all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for giving me your time. And I'm sorry we had to take time for a night that we should be talking about possibly bringing the kids back to school for this. And maybe I didn't have to say it tonight. I could have said it some other fashion. People need to know. Bullies need to be held account for their actions, be brought into the light, because what happens when you do that? They crawl back in the shadows. And that's where you better crawl. This happens again, you will be held to account for your actions, and you are on notice.
Thank you. Karen, I believe you wanted to make a statement as well.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Begin. Let me just say I support everything that Jim just said. But I'd like to go on to say, let me say that these are certainly unprecedented times in which the board has been charged with making extremely complex and challenging decisions that affect the education, health, and safety of students and staff, and the community. Due to emerging scientific data, it has been necessary for the board to evaluate, reevaluate, and adjust our decisions to align with the information that is changing hour by hour. It's not always easy to balance two major concerns, the health and safety of students and staff with the need to provide an education. Tonight, after the presentation from the Safe Learning Task Force, the administration will once again look to the board for a decision to approve or disapprove the plan. Regardless of the outcome, I want to take this opportunity to say that I recognize that board decisions require continued sacrifice on the part of many families, and that I appreciate the selfless efforts they are making in the best interests of the entire community. That said, obviously, there's another matter before us tonight that has already been addressed by Mr. Sweeney concerning a social media posting by Carolyn Morse. Many issues arise from this post, including the consequences of reckless comments, the dissemination of misinformation, to the creation of an environment of mistrust and divisiveness, and ultimately it interferes with the real and necessary work of the school board. Putting all that aside, for me, the main concern in this matter is privacy, or more to the point, the invasion of privacy. Carolyn Morse stated, and I quote, "If anyone knows the childcare situation of Yasenka or Sweeney, that could help us too. Just putting that out there," end quote. This was done in an attempt to, quote, "publicly recognize the hypocrisy," quote, and undermine the school board's decision regarding remote learning. So then this directive went to the unknown members of the secret Facebook group to find out private information and the whereabouts of my grandchildren. This was confirmed today in an email to board members and others from Megan Marley, one of two administrators of the Facebook page, Jessica Boldock being the other. Quote, "Jess and I were informed Friday of a post that inappropriately identified children of board members and their school location, requesting info for other board members' kids' whereabouts," end quote. So for the record, as vice chair of the Hampstead School Board, I condemn any attempts to invade the privacy of children or students in our schools. And as a parent, grandparent, and a member of this community, using my family and grandchildren for some personal agenda against the board due to decisions of the board with which you disagree is unconscionable. Take note. You can question my judgment as a member of the board. You can disagree with my decisions, but you cross both the proverbial and legal line defining invasion of privacy when you interject my family and grandchildren into your self-serving narrative. I am the elected official, and as such, may be subject to criticism, be it justified or not. And on this final note, let me be crystal clear so that there's no confusion. My family members, my spouse, my children, and my grandchildren are off limits to you. There is no basis for any inquiry into my family's private life. Thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Karen. Megan, I'm sorry, I think you said you were going to do a statement. If not, just let me know.
Yes, I would like to say something.
Okay. Floor is yours.
And I'll try to be brief. I know we're all eager to hear the updates on the Safe Learning Plan, but I do have a few thoughts. So I was thinking, as I was trying to figure out what I was going to say tonight, I didn't really write anything out. So hopefully I'm not all over the place, but I thought to myself, I wonder if there's ever been a Hampstead School Board member who has cried publicly or live on a public meeting. And if not, tonight could be the night. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I am a very vulnerable person and I'm okay letting the tears go. What I would like to say is that probably 90% of the crying that I've been doing for the last week, and some of these board members, my fellow board members, have been on the phone listening to me. It's not because my feelings are hurt. It's because I feel really bad that we're in this situation and everyone else is hurting. We are all feeling, I feel the tears coming. We're all feeling lost and frustrated and confused and helpless. So while I cannot say that I understand exactly why people are reacting the way they are, I can see why they are. A few weeks back, for some reason, I felt the desire to bring up the golden rule. And before I started speaking, it was a board meeting. Before I started speaking, I was thinking to myself, okay, this is probably going to sound pretty silly. I'm going to be, I'm a public figure at a school board meeting talking to a group of grown adults about how we should be treating each other, how we want to be treated. And, immediately after I said whatever I said, I thought to myself, oh, that was like, I felt silly. But now here we are today in this current situation, and it wasn't silly of me to mention that. It's a timeless lesson that we all can learn from. I have this personal belief that we're all taught life's lessons with a lens of separation and division, be it religion, race, political affiliation, gender, social, sexual orientation, financial situation, list goes on, and it's not something that our parents are necessarily teaching us. It's what we learn from society. We sit here and we label things and judge things as people being these things as good or bad, right or wrong, smart or what I would refer to as the D word in my house, because we don't say dumb. We're always, it's like we feel this pressure to always pick a side and just dismiss the other. And I feel like one of the greatest blessings being in this country is that, we have this freedom to believe what we want to believe, think what we want to think, say for the most part what we want to say. The problem is that we are going to war, literally and figuratively, with those who are not on the same side as us, on that same side of that dividing line. Are we really encouraging and supporting everyone's freedom to believe and think and say what they want to say? I think the thing that worries me the most is that our current behaviors as adults, leading by example, we're doing a lot of things to our kids. We are discouraging, I believe we are discouraging freedom of expression for our children. We are leaders as parents and role models. And we should not be showing our children that it's okay to attack somebody else because they don't share the same beliefs or approach or opinions. And I am not in any way suggesting that we should not be forming our own individual beliefs and values. However, I do think that during the process, we should have intention to understand the other side. And I think that's where this problem came to be. Gather facts, go to the source without accusing or judging, but just with open minds to try and understand. Like me personally, I don't have anything to hide. There's nothing going on in my life. I've already explained to everybody why I'm here. Like, I'm here for our kids. And if somebody is questioning my integrity, I would appreciate the conversation one-on-one. I don't want people trying to go around and collecting bits and pieces of information from people that like don't even know my personal life. They don't know why I make the decisions I make for my family, which are, I will say, very different than how I stand here on the school board. I'm not here for my personal interest. I'm here for the community. You know, we're all on this call here right now for the same reason, because we care very deeply for our children. And okay, so I did plan one thing, and I promise I will be quick. It'll just take a minute. So I would like to read a quick excerpt from a book. And just the timing of when I saw this book is it's perfect. I was at a family member's house over the weekend. I was playing with my daughter on the floor. I looked over at the TV stand and there was this book. And I don't know if the image will be mirrored, but it is called All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. I've never heard of it before. And I just want to read very quickly the cover, the back cover. So it says, most of what I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sand pile at primary school. It says Sunday school, it's a religious book, so I'm replacing the word. These are the things I learned. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that aren't yours, say you're sorry when you hurt somebody, wash your hands before you eat, flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands and stick together, be aware of wonder. So this is what's so devastating about all of this. You know, our kids are not experiencing what it is to be humans. You know, we are delaying their experience in learning these lifetime lessons. You could take that list literally, but I do think we could apply it in an adult grown-up term manner. You know, learning to play nice, play fair, share, support one another, live a balanced life. You know, people are naturally social beings, and I understand our children are being stripped away of what comes naturally to them as kids. You know, we're sitting here worrying about the effects this is having on academic progress. And, you know, at this point, I could really care less if my kids know how to add fractions, know that have memorized the 7 continents and the 4 or 5 oceans. I was told there's 5. I was taught there was 4. You know, when our children get back to school, and they're going to, I really hope for the first week, all they do is play. I hope they play so hard. I hope they are taught these lessons like right here, because they're not learning the lesson from us adults, and I'm at fault as well. Like we're trying to do our best, but you know, I think we're not understanding that we really all are here for the same reason, and we may not all agree all the time, but we just have to support each other. I've never once been angry this past week about anything anyone has said. You know, I've not taken it personally. I did worry a little bit, but I can see why the things were said. And I will say I appreciate, for whatever reason, whatever the motive was, people have spoken to me directly over phone, explained the situation, misconceptions have been clarified, you know. Now it's time to flush the negativity, like rise up and just carry forward with a plan that supports our children. We don't need to be making this more difficult than it is. And, we just have to get ourselves out of the way and just focus on why we're all here. And I could probably go out all night, so I'm not going to. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Megan. David, do you have a statement or anything you want to say? Sorry.
I really wasn't going to, but there was a couple of things that Jim had said and Megan had said that, just to jump on to what they said, do unto others. Huge rule for me. It's one of my, I'd say just something I try to live by day in and day out as much as possible. So I appreciate you saying that, Megan, because, and it goes to Jim, I echo what you said as a father. I'm probably a little bit different of how I feel, because if anybody goes after one of my children, there will be violence. I don't have that fortitude to keep it back. But I also, like Megan, I didn't get mad about this. I reflected. I actually, for the complete weekend, I pushed away from everything school board, just about, very little. I think the only reason I did anything school board related was because I bumped into one of my neighbors across the street from where I was at. Luckily, I had a beverage in hand, so I wasn't too much wanting to talk about school board stuff. And the reason why I didn't is because I needed to step back and say, don't get reactive. Don't, teach your children a lesson. So I actually sat my children down, and it goes to what you said, Jim. What would you do? You asked the community, what would you do? I want my children to know when somebody wrongs them, you can go and you can do a lot of things. I chose to reach out and have a discussion. I chose to reach out and say how disappointed I was, and reach out to say, I hear you're in pain. I hear you're this, that, and the other. Not the right thing to do by any means. It's not the right avenue. I'm so displeased. It has caused a rift in my household. It has caused stress in my household. I have reached out to the school that my daughter goes to understand their security, to understand what they do. Because while I don't think that it was truly thought out what this person was doing, because this person wouldn't want me to do that to their family, their children, anybody in their family. I was very disappointed in this. I've seen some negative things out there, and it does hurt. It goes to what Megan said, there are people hurting, and this mental health of people just don't know what to do in these unprecedented times. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to answer to your point, Jim. What would you do as a community member? That's what I chose to do. I certainly am angry about certain parts. I'm probably choosing some 4-letter words not to say, that I thought in my head and that I had discussions with. So I was angry. I did have eventually those discussions, and that's what I chose to do. Thank you.
Sorry, didn't unmute myself. Thank you, David. I don't have much to say, frankly. I think my fellow board members have summed everything up pretty well. So I'll do a final summation. Treat others how you want to be treated. Elected officials do expect to get criticism and feedback. Children and families categorically off limits. I think that covers it. With that in mind, I know we have a big presentation to get to, and at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Flynn and Dr. Metzler to lead us through their safe learning update for tonight.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, board members. We appreciate it. Mike is going to, Mr. Flynn rather, is going to put the slides up. So you might as well go ahead and put that first slide up. I had a few, the chair had offered the opportunity to make some comments as well. So, it's more about the presentation for our safe learning plan update. So I say good evening, Hampstead. It's pretty awesome to see 230 people on for one of our meetings. People are checking back in, which is outstanding. That it's been that way for a while. I know quite a few of you are eager to hear the plan, so we'll get to that. The task force met Monday afternoon, we had an opportunity to review and endorse a new plan. Most of the details you've seen because we mentioned these weeks ago, with the exception of a new cohort, which will be cohort D. That'll address families that choose to do most, if not all, of the teaching themselves, but plan to return at some point in the future. It falls short of the traditional homeschooling, but very similar. Our traditional homeschoolers could also benefit from this approach. So the district will support a cohort D with materials like syllabus, et cetera, and you'll see that in tonight's plan. This will make their transition back seamless for those families. Still finalizing what this will look like, but the spirit is to make sure that we provide support to everybody. It's our hope to continue to do this and follow this approach post-pandemic for our homeschool population. It would be their choice whether or not to take advantage of this resource or not. We're certainly not required to provide this or expected to do this, but it seems like the right thing to do. So we're excited about cohort D. I do have to say we have quite a few conveniently misinformed people on social media. We began planning in March, and my intention is not to debunk all the crazy things that have been said, but we are clear on what we can and what we can't do. The number of students that we can serve in person changes based on the criteria. The criteria changes pretty quickly with the pandemic, and of course, the potential MOU, also known as a Memorandum of Understanding, which is an agreement between our unions and our school board. You can't provide a hard number without the criteria established. Let me state the obvious here. Candid responses to your employer and candid responses to your union leadership are never one and the same, nor we ever expect them to be. We simply asked the unions to tell us what we could do to make returning to in-person learning possible, something that they could support. We've been trying to get a clear path for months. We took care of everything that we could prior to the first MOU draft. We can't invent a vaccine, but we could certainly get the air exchange rates tested and many other things. We have an outstanding relationship between the board, the administration, and our unions. That trust takes decades to earn, but only minutes to lose. So again, the conveniently misinformed social media aggressors continue to attempt to bully staff and school board members and place blame. Everyone that is actually attempting to do what we pledged to do, and that's to get everyone back safely, is operating in good faith and is trying to protect a culture and climate that has been developed in Hampstead over decades. The irony is the approach that this Facebook group was taking will deliver the exact opposite outcome. Staff will dig their heels in. We won't be able to establish an instructional support staff or a support staff willing to do anything in person. And I certainly hope it does not come to that. We can mitigate our damage to the climate and culture that's been created by these Facebook people, but we need to make sure we get back to the real work. We should be spending our energy planning and executing the safest learning plan for Hampstead. Continue to keep our undivided attention on the real work. We're looking forward to sharing that new plan with you right now. So we're going to get on to this first slide. First slide here is our Safe Learning Plan update. Now, this plan was based on the current selection numbers. It's subject to change based on selection numbers. It's also subject to change based on an MOU. Now, many people, may or may not understand what an MOU is. That's a memorandum of understanding. If you've never been at the table for collective bargaining for a contract, you may or may not understand how that works, but we have a collectively bargained agreement with our unions. When we change the work environment, we need to have a memorandum of understanding. That's being worked on as we speak. Board members have, the board actually has some requested language from our unions, and our legal team has looked at that, and the board will be making some really hard decisions on language that they can agree to, and we'll be getting that memorandum of understanding back to the union, and hopefully we'll be able to ratify it and approve it at the same time that we're approving our safe learning plan. And so we have a target date of next Tuesday. What people need to remember is, we agreed to, the board voted on this plan that was currently in place, and our teachers have done an outstanding job creating a remote learning platform that we'll be able to pivot back to in the event that the pandemic gets worse. We did get good news today in Rockingham County. We shifted from a risk of an outbreak back to slow disease growth. So we've shifted back to a level, I think that's good news for us in terms of moving forward with this plan. But you need to know, we're right on time. The planning has been going on since last March. There wasn't, this big conspiracy of things not happening. Everything's been happening. We know exactly what we can and can't do, and we're in the process of delivering on those promises. The goal has never changed. The goal has been to get everyone back in person as safely and quickly as possible. Our administrative staff, our teaching staff, our support staff, and everyone else that works in our schools has been doing just that in good faith. And so, it's really frustrating when people become conveniently misinformed and spread information that's not true. It only complicates the work and delays progress. And I'll leave that at that. So, Mike, you want to jump into the next slide?
Absolutely.
So what
All
we
right.
have now is our hybrid proposed schedule. Now, I haven't shifted philosophically how I feel about this. It's not something, it's the next best thing. We started last week with what's the best we can do is try to get everybody back in person. This hybrid plan, as you look at it when we go through it, I think you'll notice we're trying to get our youngest learners back in person 5 days a week. A hybrid that gets everyone else back in several days a week. It brings everyone back together at different points. On some of it, you'll see it's Fridays, but it's that 5th day. It also supports a cohort D that is not even in our remote crowd, but another crowd. So I ask you to be patient. We're going to go through this whole presentation. Hopefully it'll be clear so that everybody understands exactly what we're proposing. So Mike, you want to jump in and talk a little bit about what this hybrid proposed schedule looks like?
Thank you. So some points of what you're seeing currently is we want to make sure that people are understanding the difference between a hybrid, which will be cohort in A and B, which you will see, cohort C, which will be strictly virtual, and then cohort D, as Dr. Betcher mentioned, is more parent driven. So if you are in a cohort A or B, the hybrid model, that means you'll have 2 days of in-person instruction, followed by 2 days of remote instruction. When you hear the word remote this evening, think of it as if you were in the spring. Remote, student will be accessing their curriculum and documents driven through what they had while they were in person with their teachers, along with what will be posted on Google Classroom and or Seesaw to supplement the class. Now, if you are in group C, which is virtual, in regards to scheduling and planning, you'll hear more about that, but virtual learning, if you select cohort C, will continue the model we're currently in with having direct instruction via online, Zoom, or however it may be. The principals are going to get a little more into that detail, but I just wanted to clarify as you're going through, when you see in person, obviously means you'll be in the building. If you see remote, that means students will be accessing their education through Google Classroom and supplement to what they did in person. And then if you see virtual, that means you would be selecting the current model you're in with delivering of instruction. What we did as a group is we targeted the next I think it's 8 weeks, could be wrong, 8 weeks to get you to winter break in regards to what the scheduling will look like. Now, as Dr. Betzler mentioned, things can change. But what we wanted to do is allow everyone the opportunity to see what this will look like from now until winter break. As Mr. Collins mentioned today, it's possibly the worst time of the year calendar-wise in regards to disruptions throughout November and December. What ended up happening is, as you'll see, the initial plan of the 2 days in, 2 days out with a regroup on Friday, we only ended up with 3 Fridays over the next 8 weeks in regards to the break. So that's why you'll see some 4-day weeks, you'll see a 3-day week, and then as we move forward here, you have 2 5-day weeks and then followed by a 2-day week prior to break. So we've always said in regards to scheduling, if there are adjustments, we'll be communicating them out, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing a good job in regards to planning from now until winter break. Mr. Collins is going to go ahead and jump up and discuss the new K2 half-day model.
Good evening. It is our proposal that we call the cohort A and cohort B within a school day. In essence, we're going to ask for our kindergarten children, first grade children, and second grade children go into a half-day model, which will mean some of our students will be assigned to be in the mornings, and the rest of the students will be assigned to be in the afternoons. This is for kindergarten to second grade only. To be really specific, the vast majority of the students at the beginning of the alphabet will be coming to school in the mornings from 9 until 11:30. There will be a 1.5 hour break in the middle of the day. And this is intentional so that the custodial staff and the teaching staff and others can make sure that we get everything refreshed. So when the next group of students show up in the afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock, we'll basically spend the 2.5 hours there. In essence, we are trying to provide a daily instructional piece for the children. The children, when they are not in school, that is the point in time where they will access the other parts of their learning. I mean, some of it, to be straight up, it's going to be the lunch will be at home, not at school. It means the playtime at home, we're going to encourage that be structured at home, or some families will probably take other options to take care of their children. The big reason that I have been promoting this model for months is because our youngest learners developmentally need to have daily contact with their teachers. And this is a balance act against the fact that we cannot bring all of our children into the school at a given time. I literally have a 6-foot pole that was donated to my office last week. I've walked around and used that pole to set up for the visits at my school. I have taken that pole and walked around the school and calculated how many students can be in each of the room. I know we've had other administrators going around checking out this as well. We simply cannot put 20 children in any of our classrooms. Many that know the central school know that the building has the restrictive components. So back to the kindergarten, first grade and second grade. Many people are familiar with this model because this is what half-day kindergarten has been for years. I think the big piece here is we will need to provide busing in the middle of the school day. So that means the children that are finishing at 11:30, which is the K-1-2 children, those that are finishing their morning routine will jump on the bus. The bus will run the community. We've been using for the kindergarten bus year, one bus. Now we will need to have a couple more buses. And at that time, of course, teachers will have their lunch break planning time. And then the students for the second group of students will show up in the afternoons. The result is the students will be in school every single day to get their core learning of reading and math. And it will be supplemented with, when they go home, they can bring their devices if needed, or they could complete their other work. We will actually push off to some of the specialties. I think Mr. Flynn wanted to have address the busing. So Mike, you want to speak to the busing?
Yep. So I just wanted to chime in regards to the busing. So within the contract we currently have, it would be $129.53 per each additional bus we had to run midday. Now, that is still to be determined on parent selection in regards to transportation. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing the board with what it could look like, and that's why you see the 126 would be that cost from November 2nd through the rest of the year. Obviously, those numbers are also fluid depending on what we're looking at. So it is the buses we run. We currently run one bus, and we anticipate in speaking with transportation that could include an additional 1 or 2 depending on parent selection.
I would like to highlight that I had significant conversations with the teaching staff at my school about this, and they highly endorse this K-1-2 going to the half-day model. And I just want to go to a really important point about why this is so critical to our youngest learners. A young learner is learning how to read, which means you're learning phonics, you're putting your letters together, you're creating sounds, putting them into sentences. Our older learners, and this typically tips right around 2nd, 3rd, and sometimes into 4th grade, are learning, they're learning by reading. In other words, they can pick up a book, a social studies text, and understand the text, and that's the way they learn. But the youngest learner, they don't learn in the same method. They need to be working directly in contact with the teacher. And if we were to go with K1, 2 and the 2 days in and then not return for another 5 days, that's a break of continuity for a young mind in developing. So I highly endorse that we go ahead and get our youngest ones into the school on a daily basis. Now, there's going to be a lot of conversation about what needs to be within that half day. If you're looking at the slide in front of you, you see that 30 minutes would be the morning meeting, which is pretty much the standard in every single classroom at the central school every day. It tends to be a little bit shorter with some grade levels, maybe the third or fourth grade, because the children jump into other things real quickly because of their age and learner characteristics. If you want to talk about literacy in a typical kindergarten, you're looking at a 30-minute literacy. In grades 1 and 2, it starts to ramp up because literacy also starts really moving a lot more into writing. If you look at kindergarten, 30 minutes of math is about tap out time with the little ones. And our first and second graders are ready for more sustained math. Then you get into all the specials, which are going to be roped. Now, I do know that this chart that is here about FLES, phys ed, art, and music is one of those pieces that I have to work through all the details of the schedule, but we do intend that the children will have their physical education at the school. We found that the physical education with the virtual piece is important, but physical movement during a day is a key to positive learning. So we wanted to make sure that the students are going to get out there. We will minimize recesses for the K1, 2 children because they're only there for 2.5 hours a day. Art and music are very likely, and technology as well, are very likely to end up being part of the rest of the day of the student, which means they do the synchronous, asynchronous lessoning stuff. A critical component to an early childhood program is the response to intervention, RTI, which means tier 2, tier 3. Those are terms that our community has developed and understood over the years. Research-based. This is also where Title I picks up students and works with them. This is the reading specialist providing services for a child that are at that little bump in the learning. This is also part of the process that leads to better general understanding that this child maybe does have a disability that special education needs to step into play. RTI is also a common time during the day when students that do have special needs receive their services. And let's go to the students that have an opposite type of a learning style. When you've got this student that's performing above their grade level, we refer to that as our Ventures program. That's also part of the RTI because that's what this child response to intervention is all about. A lot of people have been familiar with the term WIN throughout this phase of learning we've been in for the last 6 weeks. That's what I need. What I need is actually RTI, is determining what it is. What I need during the virtual learning has a much broader concept because that's when we do touch base with children for some of the other pieces that we know our youngest learners need. If we could move on, Mr. Flynn. Now, I do want to speak to our third and fourth graders, and you're going to hear more and more about what the middle school model looks like. But the third and fourth grader are actually going to go into a model that's more in line with what will be happening with our students at the middle school level. The students will have 2 days of in-person learning. And again, like I said earlier, class meetings are a pretty common piece. Literacy, math, intervention literacy, recess 1 or 2, depending on the grade level. Of course, PE is going to happen there. FLES, we may be able to do live other unified arts, but most likely they're going to be on the remote days, the other 2 days of the week. Those and the students will log into their Google Classroom activities. A lot of self-directed learning. These are the children that are going home to create that project, the STEM project. This is the rest of those unified arts, art, music, technology. Again, FLES, I just want to point this out, is really only for grades K and 1 because we haven't brought it up to our entire school at this time. I think I'm ready to move on to the next slide. This is just a graphic to sort of give you an idea of what that third group of students would be about. These are the families that say, I would rather, for whatever good cause, reason, that they want to keep their child at home or in some other setting. And this would be considered the cohort C, which means they're going to be connected to a teacher at the Hempstead Central School that will be providing some direct instruction. in the environments, such as Zoom. And then if you look at this, you can see that there's going to be the class meeting, literacy, math pushing on down. When I spoke to that a little bit early. Science and social studies starts to emerge in K1 and 2 as a separation. And of course, the unified arts, we will provide similar to what we've been offering most recently. And FLES, Senior is doing a fantastic job there. Of course, the online tools are offered to all of our students, whether in cohort A, B, or C, and it now looks as if we're talking about a cohort D. I think I can move on, Mr. Flynn. A question that was asked us to take a look at is how many students would end up in cohort A and B. There will be a process that's been, what we will be doing is we will be assigning students to a cohort A or a cohort B. So for the youngest students, that means morning or afternoon. For the older students, that means the first 2 days of the week or the latter 2 days of the week. And of course, cohort C is what we anticipate where families will choose to be. Based on the numbers that we've known from the previous surveys, we are looking at kindergarten classroom groups that would be 5 to 9 in the cohort A, and then probably 5 to 7. Having done scheduling for morning and afternoon with the younger students, I do know that there will be a lot of families that will be, shall we say, lobbying to get their children into the morning sessions, and I understand that. We will do the best that we can, but we want to turn this around fast. Grade 1 and 2, similar. Grades 3 and 4, these are based upon what we know for numbers. This will cause, in effect, that we will probably reassign a teacher to work with cohort C, which means most of our students will stay with their classroom teacher. However, they may see them for the morning or the afternoon, or they will see them for the first 2 days of the week or the last 2 days of the week. And we will work directly with families that are impacted by a teacher change. Cohort D.
Sorry, Mr. Collins, Dr. Metz is going to speak to cohort D.
Works for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Collins. So cohort D, I alluded to a little bit in the opening. This is parent driven with support from the district. So most people are aware that, when you homeschool, you send in a letter, you remove your children from the district, and you homeschool, you come up with all your materials and curriculum and all those sorts of things on your own. So what we're recommending, suggesting, if there are parents that because the Zoom meetings don't work, they don't want their kids staring at a computer, they have the skills to do some of the teaching and feel extremely comfortable and competent in delivering that, that's awesome. We want to support that. So this is really parent driven teaching, but we want to make sure, most of the parents that I've had an opportunity to speak to that are considering this said, this is just during the pandemic. We want to come back and we want to make sure that it's seamless, meaning we don't want them too far behind. We certainly don't want them too far ahead. We kind of want them right in the right spot. So they'll also have access to those virtual days when the classes come back together. And so that might be an opportunity to check in just to see how you're doing. It's almost, that kind of feedback. I think all teachers love feedback. It's check for understanding, if you will. So, you're asking questions to make sure that, and I think the same thing is true if you were homeschooling, you'd want to kind of check for understanding just to see if you were doing exactly kind of what you thought you should be doing, so that in the event that you connect back with the district, that your child will be able to just kind of slide right back in, pivot on a dime, right back into the classroom. So the district's going to provide as needed. There's curriculum documents. Some of that is available online as we speak. A traditional kind of syllabus, kind of following along. What kind of pacing? Are there performance assessments that you wanted to use? Materials? Again, these are all parent choice, right? Flexibility, home scheduling. So some parents, that have to work and can't do this during the day, and that was creating some of those that synchronous or asynchronous problem with accessing. They can schedule however they need to at home. So and I talked a little bit about that transition back, and certainly that continued support, unified arts and student services, anything. And I think, I know this, for every family, this is really going to be specific to that family. The specificity in terms of what a particular family may need That's going to change from family to family. So we want to be able to be flexible on our end, but we wanted to make sure that we provided all those kinds of services and support so that families that choose this option, they won't feel abandoned. They won't feel like they're not part of the district. You're part of the district. You're just choosing to do some of this work yourself because, again, you feel that you can do it. You feel like you've been doing it. You've been doing a great job, and you wanted to continue, and you just really didn't want that computer screen problem because for some of our children, staring at a screen has really since last March has just been too much, and so we're going to support this. So this is our cohort D. We certainly will be able to answer more questions. If you have questions, certainly, Principal Denola and Principal Collins, Mr. Flynn, myself, any help that we can provide you in terms of if this is an option that you're considering, please reach out and any help we can give. We just wanted you to have another option. So, obviously you have the in-person a few days a week with the virtual learning. You have cohort C, which is all remote with complete district support, and this would be parents doing the teaching themselves with our support as much as we could possibly provide. Now, our hope really is even our traditional homeschoolers, that people that choose to homeschool, we're hoping that even post-pandemic that we can continue this, because I do think the more we talked about this seemed like the right thing to do, even though we're not required to do it, even though it's not something that we've been doing. I think it just seemed like the right thing to do. So we want to really do a good job with this as well, this cohort D. So Mike, I don't know if you had any more you wanted to add there.
I think you nailed it. So moving forward, we wanted to, Dr. Cheney's going to speak a little bit to social emotional support, which we've discussed both what we're currently doing and how it's going to continue. So Dr. Cheney?
Yes, thank you. Social emotional learning is always at the forefront of our minds, especially this week. That's been a nice part of our social emotional work, is having some of the children join us in school this week. The teachers have been able to do an in-person check-in, even though they've been doing online check-ins. An in-person check-in was a really nice addition to that. As you see here, we're going to continue with our daily class meetings. That will be with all cohorts. Second step lessons are going to continue, as well as student services. We have students who receive services from both our guidance counselor and our district social worker, and those will continue both in person and virtually for families that are opting for the virtual choice. And then, as I said, the school visits this week have been a fantastic opportunity for our teachers to check in with their students, to continue those communications with our student service providers, for teachers to collaborate and work together on how to support all of our learners, whether their strengths are reading, math, or if they need some additional support with the social emotional learning. It's been a nice addition. And an opportunity for us to cultivate those classroom connections that we've built online. So we're looking forward to continuing to support our students in all areas of their development.
Mike, if I could talk a little bit about this too.
Absolutely.
I also want, again, cohort C, cohort D. If this is something that people that choose cohort D, if this is something that you need, please reach out to our schools, right? So just like we talked about checking for understanding, we also need to check for social emotional support in terms of what our families will need, what our kids will need. And that's all 4 cohorts. So A, B, C, and D. I know the kids in person will feel like they have more access, but it shouldn't be that way. I mean, all 4 cohorts should feel like they're adequately supported for social emotional support as well. And that's really the goal. And I think, if you're in cohort D, we're really going to need you to reach this way more. So then obviously the kids that are in our classrooms right in front of us, it's a little easier. And then we have the next group C, that the direct, but that cohort D is also going to need to take advantage of any social emotional support that particular family thinks that their children need or that family needs. So please reach out, because our people are we're going to be reaching out as well. But if that's something that you feel you need, please take advantage of that service, because that's something I know we do a really good job with it. And I think, we don't want you to feel abandoned or isolated. We want you to feel like you're part of the district. And this is really one of the services that is a really important part of the Hampstead School District. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, so Mr. Collins wanted to wrap up before we move on to Ms. Nola. Thank you.
I just want to highlight a really important statement here. We are offering a different suggestion for our K-1-2 students intentionally, because that's what those students need at this point in time. If we could offer to bring them into school full days, 5 days a week, I would much prefer that. But we do not have a facility and a time where we can offer that. So this was something that we thought was the most important for those children because of what they need. Our older students are far more capable, and we also know the impact upon families to offer differing models. So our 3rd and 4th grade students are certainly ready with a model more parallel to their middle school family members. So we are trying to do what we can to provide the services that the children need at our school. If you do a quick calculation on time for the students that are coming to the school, they're basically spending about an equal amount of time. But it's being provided in a totally different way because of the developmental needs of those children. I learned very early on as an administrator that there's no such thing as an unequal treatment of unequals. It's really, really hard to understand that concept, but the concept is that we can never provide exactly the same thing to our students. In this day and age, there are different families out there. I talk to families every day about why they are talking about what their family needs. Every child has very dramatically different needs. But in the big picture piece, our little ones need to be at school every day. And if we can't get them there every day, I want them at school every single day. Our older students are ready to learn on their own, and they're actually being relatively successful with this. Not in every single case, and those ones that are not working, we're going to ramp it up. The biggest piece is social emotional support, and Dr. Cheney did a nice part nailing what we need to be looking at there, and we are going to continue working on this one. And that's going to be a piece of equity for all students, that we try to address the social emotional needs all the way across. We're going to look on this in 2 or 3 years about our academic growth when we get the measurables. And that's going to be an important piece for us to move forward and take care of our children. So thank you for taking a look at all of these options, but I strongly recommend that we move our little ones to 5 days a week, and our older ones get into a program aligned with what's going to be shared at our middle school. Thank you.
Mike, just to finish the central school, I certainly agree with Principal Collins. You know, our youngest learners, we need to support that 5-day model somehow, some way. And so I appreciate how much work he has put in with his staff, and certainly with Terry Lynn. They've done just a really nice job to bring this to this point. They did a great job with the remote platform, but you know, that model is something I think is part of I think it's an important part of this hybrid presentation, that we get at least K-1-2 in 5 days a week somehow, some way. So thank you, Principal Collins. I appreciate how you know, how strongly you've advocated for that to take place, and making sure that that's part of this presentation. So thanks for that. Okay, Mike. Maria?
Mr. Nola? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. Hempstead Middle School, we are ready and so excited to welcome our Hawks back in the hybrid model. If you look at our schedule, this is our schedule that we have on a daily basis, and on a regular daily schedule for all children. We are going to follow, if you look at Monday in school, this would be Monday and Tuesday, we would have cohort A, and that would be designated by the alphabet. And we will do the first part of the alphabet on Monday and Tuesday. And they will be our blue cohort, which will put us in alliance with the spacing needs for this pandemic. If you look at our schedule, this is how kids would come in normally last year and this year. We'd start off the day checking in with them with the advisory. We've expanded our advisory program to be able to have small group setting, to see how kids are. How was your weekend? How are things going? How can I help you? Small group activities. And we've expanded it to be lengthier on other days, and check out at the end of the week. And the advisors have taken on a very strong role in the student's life. The UA stands for Unified Arts, which is those classes such as our family consumer science, band, music, general music, chorus, and all of our other UA offerings. So that's what that stands for. When you see core stands for math, science, reading, writing, science, and social studies. And they would receive that every day they came in on Mondays and Tuesdays for the blue cohort. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, they would be remote. And then on Friday, we would all come together as a whole school in a virtual learning mode that we are used to doing. We will do our cleaning of our schools in the evenings after the students have left in preparation for the next day. And we have the equipment and we have the people to do so. So that is our blue cohort. Then you have our gold cohort. Our L through Z students will come in on Wednesday and Thursday in school and follow their normal schedule. We are trying to give a sense of a flow and a rhythm that they are used to. My entire staff has broken off into different categories and addressed things like recess. Recess, we're looking at it more as a refresh. We're going to incorporate activities that are safe and social distancing. And we will absolutely work with the students to understand which games are going to work and which are not. Lunch, we have enough room in our cafeteria to allow for 3 students per table. We did that during testing last week and it worked out very well. We will continue to do with our continue to support our students through the RTI block, which Mr. Collins spoke with. That's a district-wide initiative to give kids what they need in support and extensions. Students will absolutely be involved in their ventures program. So it's pretty simple for the middle school. There's not really a need for me to go on and on about, it's a simple A cohort, gold cohort, a blue cohort, and then we're all together on Fridays. There are 3 Fridays between now and winter break. There's only 3 Fridays that we are in school. So we made the decision to all come together on Fridays because of the timing, the scheduling. For the cohort C, for those students that are remaining in a virtual cohort, they will be taught by a teacher virtually on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then join together with the rest of the school on Friday. That will be our challenge with regards to who are those teachers that are teaching virtually, their credentialing, and who the students are at what grade levels. So that will be our work hitting the ground first thing tomorrow morning based on what is decided this evening. So we have many ideas. We're ready to go on the cohort C. The cohort D, Dr. Metzler talked about that in depth about what that means and our supports for those families that decide to do a cohort D. We have the resources, we have the support, and again, our staff is committed to every single child that is a Hempstead Middle School student, regardless of what the decision is made. Anticipated class sizes, we are in a better place than I believe that the central school is. And we have, even though our building was back in 1977 when it was built and some extensions to that, we have some flexibility just based on our library media center with our movable bookcases that was approved last year. We can move all the bookcases aside. We have a large learning center that can be used. It can be broken into 2 sections during a hybrid learning schedule. We also have classrooms that have dividers between them that we can open up those separations to allow for more space. So the anticipated class sizes, we absolutely can accommodate. So that is all good news. As far as unified art, sometimes you see some of the class sizes at the bottom, you say 6 to 20, and it's like, ooh, well, sometimes that is those students that are also doing chorus and band, but they're meeting in 2 separate spaces, and we are accommodating for those numbers.
And all you kind of jumped the gun and did this one already for the middle school, that we're going to be accommodating anyone for cohort D, and you mentioned the middle school will be following the same practices, so we're going to go ahead and skip forward.
Sorry, Mike, can you go back to class sizes for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So one of the big questions is, several questions. One is, we have tents. What are we using the tents for? Well, people need to understand, we've been using the tents all along. The tents have been a tremendous asset for our special ed population and some of the people that have been using them, and we will be using that creative space as we move forward. Second piece here is, if you remember, so we talked about trying to get back, our recommendation was try to get back in full, and we went from 85 to almost 90% of the people wanting to be back, which made that prohibitive. Now, there was a number of people that were undecided, and so the undecided families, when we reached out to them, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, because we talked to families, most of them either said, no, I want to be back in person, or I want to wait to see the presentation this evening on the 20th of October before we make a decision. So for planning purposes, we just assumed that they would be in person, and we put them in these numbers. So you see some ranges. The other thing is part of the budgeting thing earlier this evening with Principal Denola, we talked a lot about creative spaces and what we would do in the event that these numbers became too large. So one of those things, and there are obviously many, how are you using the cafeteria? How are you using the gym? How are you using the library / media center? She's been able to actually plan to have, for instance, our books on shelves, those are on wheels. We're able to move them in our media center library. That's a space that she can use. And so there are lots of creative ways to address these numbers. These numbers, if you remember the very first slide, these numbers can change, primarily because after this evening, we're going to survey back. We'll see how many people choose cohort A or B, how many people in cohort C, and if there are people in cohort D, the numbers might change a little bit. I don't want to call it worst case scenario, bad choice of words, but it's worst case scenario, meaning for us, worst case scenario, these are the biggest numbers, right? So this is the greatest challenge that could create some staffing challenges and those sorts of things for us, but we are in good shape. We do believe this is a plan that we can execute safely, and it's one that will fit, hopefully, with an MOU once the union and board are able to agree on language. I think that the parameters will make this something that we can do. So that's why these ranges look like this. And how can you go from 8 to 16? Clearly, you must know what the number is. Well, that number is going to fluctuate quite a bit. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and one other part about the numbers is, if you split it into layers, we've been mentioning A through K, and I want to be very clear that we have lists, and we are accommodating families that live in the same household with different last names. We will make sure that they are all going on the same day. The second part is, when you're looking at an elementary school or a middle school, if there are 40 third graders, and then you split them technically by 20, depending on where their names fall, someday in Mrs. Gordon's classroom there may be 5, and the next day, because of the cohort and where the alphabet fell, could be 9. So that's where you just see some shifting in the numbers. But we wanted to make sure that the number that you're seeing is someday your student may come home and say, yeah, there was only 8 today. And then the next day they may come home and say there was 12. At the middle school level, it really has to do with scheduling, whether it's an A day versus a B day, unified arts, which class. So that's why you see some differences within the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
Thanks.
And truly, that's been the challenge. So we've always pushed it out, and those parents that were not ready to make a decision, we definitely went to the higher side to make sure that everyone is safe. Our social emotional support, I can't even tell you the amount of things that our staff has done in the past 4 weeks that we've been in school. We've extended our advisory program to really reach those families in the most need. Some, you may have a family that says, I haven't heard much from the school counselors or the social worker, or or the team that much. We have really been focused on those students at risk, and those students that have not been able to access their education for whatever reasons those are. We have school counselors that have been doing home visits regularly. Our social worker has done home visits regularly, getting those students back on track or even into the building to learn with support. We have our SRO Detective Conway has been so helpful in doing these home visits, and it's not in any other fashion other than care. And it's like, hey, how can we help you? What's going on? These are tough times for all families. And sometimes the supports are some of the services that we can get them through different agencies and through our own school district. So we have, if there's been some silence, we go out, we check in. Sometimes we bring a steak sandwich, and there's many meetings that have been accomplished in people's driveways of just like, hey, how can we help you? Here's some support for you. So the advisory program is that in-person piece that we do on right now in remote learning every single day. We will continue to meet virtually on remote days, and the advisory program is extremely important. And that is, we are definitely meeting that need of the social emotional learning. And perhaps in the first 4 weeks, it's been focused on those kids with the most needs and the families with the most needs. But I know that each team has a process to reach out and to regroup to help all of our families. Our student services has done a really nice job of, they meet twice a week with our SRO administrators, school nurse, and who needs our help right now. And we just go in. So I'm very, very proud of my entire staff for reaching out to our families during this really difficult time.
Mike, final comment on the social emotional support, not just at the middle school, but certainly the central school, the district, if you will. You know, one of the things when we first started, I was asking what was something I thought was the greatest strength, our students, right? So I think one of the things was how kind they are to one another. And so to take that to the next level, what's one of the greatest strengths of our building? If you've ever been in our buildings as a parent or as a staff member, you'll know our staff, specifically our guidance counselors, our social workers, our nurses, our principals, our assistant principals, they know our kids. They know them by name. They know the parents. Our SRO has jumped right in over the last few years. He knows our family. So I just think that that's our greatest strength. I think this is something that we do really, really well. And I hope, again, that all 4 cohorts will take advantage of the support that we're providing, especially around social emotional learning. So thank you, Maria. That was well said and certainly very much appreciated. I agree with you. Our staff in both buildings is just incredible what they do for our kids. So
Thank you, Dr. Meltzer. We appreciate that.
Okay, Mrs. Flynn.
I just want to start by saying our special education staff have really done a phenomenal job trying to provide as many in-person services as much as possible, including evaluations, instruction, and related services. And our goal in the next phase is to continue to do this, again, as much as we can. And our hope is that we can bring as many students as we can into the building to continue doing this through the next phase. Obviously being mindful of social distancing and making sure all precautions are taken and it's done safely.
So Mike, again, wanted to say, to thank special ed staff for certainly providing the services during this first 5 weeks of this remote platform, and certainly taking advantage of the tents that the board has supported, because that has been a great learning space and asset. That also brought the question, what about clubs and activities? My hope is, we had hoped that we'd be able to offer clubs and activities. We need to have staff that's willing to, obviously be the advisor or the sponsor of a particular club. So I'm hoping that as we transition into this hybrid model, that will be able to offer those clubs and activities. But again, that will be conditioned upon having staff that's willing and able to provide those opportunities for our kids. So I think once the kids are back in person, they'll be advocating for themselves, and I think you'll see some of those clubs and activities start to have some life and get back up and running. That's the hope, anyway. So, and I think that the tents will be something that they'll be able to use for safe spaces. Hopefully, if it doesn't get too cold too quick. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. So last week we mentioned in our presentation about the transition week being October 26th and 30th. We wanted to just deliver a few more details in regards to how that is shaping up. You're going to see the direct instruction, the virtual direct instruction shift towards the morning, which will allow an opportunity for our staff to plan and prepare for the next phase. This will allow for to continue the direct morning check-ins. Number one, will also allow an opportunity to deliver, whether it be a new lesson or continued learning. And then what you'll see is in the afternoon on that week, students will be driven to more asynchronous learning, which would be continued from the morning instruction, may include a unified arts teacher, perhaps in regards to how we're scheduling, how the scheduling may land to allow teachers all the same opportunity to plan and prepare, in making sure that they are ready within the classroom to deliver the appropriate level of instruction that we're going to be looking for. I know that first week back will look different, as a couple people have mentioned. We want to make sure that the transition is smooth, but we're also not losing that gap of more time without receiving the direct instruction. So in regards to the special education, as Francine and Dr. Metzler have mentioned, there are so many things that are occurring on a day-to-day basis. There may need to be some modified schedules in regards to the timing or the days. And once we have more of that, that will be communicated to the families. This week is important for the staff to I think twofold. One is to be prepared for the 2-day hybrid, but our virtual instructors that may become virtual to plan and prepare for how they're going to be delivering. It also allows that opportunity to go from one phase to the next. I know we've mentioned several times that there could be a possibility that we'll have to pivot. This will be that first opportunity where we get to learn to pivot from one to the next. So the administrative team is doing a great job of understanding that the students need to continue to receive their instruction this week, but we also have to be mindful to plan and prepare for the students to walk through that door. The best thing that's occurred are these previous 2 weeks. We learned, I know Mr. Nolo just shared it with me this morning, how much we learned from 5th grade on Monday to what it looked like on Thursday. We had to make adjustments, changes, understanding, and then the same at the central school. I know it was so good to see those faces these past couple of days, but it's allowed us to have a better idea of what we can anticipate.
So Mike, I want to take a giant leap of faith here. Just going to state the obvious again. So as we're working on that memorandum of understanding with our unions, that would, we're looking at October 27th. So we're 2 days into the transition week while we're planning. So I think, it's going to, on good faith on both sides, we're going to get that done. Also want to take this opportunity to, thank those, some parents, some have sent some emails that are helpful. People send ideas, and certainly those things are taken into consideration. Most people are sensitive to the fact they realize that we are receiving quite a few emails. I'm not apologizing for responding in a way. I just wanted to drive people back here to this presentation tonight because some of this was still in the works. I couldn't say too much about it in emails while we're in the middle of planning. However, I appreciate people's patience, and certainly people that have positive ideas and ways to kind of help move the district forward. Very much appreciated. Your comments are not falling on deaf ears. That is, hopefully you see some of your ideas have been embedded in this presentation somehow, some way. We obviously can't be all things to all people, but we're trying to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, meaning that hopefully everybody's needs are being met with this plan. I would not bring a plan forward if I did not feel we could do it safely. I do believe this is safe. Obviously the goal is still to get everybody back full time to a new normal. That will not change, even though we're jumping into this hybrid. We're still going to look for ways to try to get to that place. A week ago, we were hoping we could get there. We just had too many people that wanted to be back in person. So that's fine. This is the next best option. We believe with four cohorts that will meet the needs of just about everybody. In the event that you if you still feel like you're an outlier, all I can do is encourage you to advocate for yourself. Certainly through myself, through Mr. Flynn, through the school board, if there's something we can do, because this doesn't meet your need for some reason, we'll certainly have to, we'll just take your thoughts into consideration, your comments into consideration, and see what we can do. But again, we appreciate your patience, and certainly thank you for participating in the process as we put together the best safe learning plan for Hampstead. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, do you want to finish staffing or me?
I will. This is, the work in progress. So the most challenging part, to be as transparent as we can, with obviously all the stakeholders, right? So the human resource department has to work with staff, right? Because staff, for whatever reason, people could have specific reasons which may not allow them to return to whatever plan that we think is something that we can do. So, so some of that staff, some of those, they'll be part of our remote staffs. Those are people that'll be working with children on our remote, in our cohort C, and maybe a little bit with D. We'll see how that goes. But that's a work in progress, primarily because as people see and look at what we're doing, I think they'll determine if and when they can come back to work. Or what capacity they're able to work. And so there's no judgment. I mean, it's everybody has their own personal situation that they have to assess and feel what they can and cannot do, and how it works. So all I can tell you is from our perspective, we're being as flexible and with staff as we can. Try to be they're called accommodations for a reason. So we're trying to be accommodating to try to make sure that we can offer a really robust, kind of powerful hybrid model to the community with these different cohorts, and yet at the same point maintain both our instructional and our support staff and what their needs are as well. So that falls into the next category, which is the MOU, which you see some people call it MOA, Memorandum of Understanding, a Memorandum of Agreement. That's an addendum, if you will, to an already negotiated collective bargaining agreement as far as what the work conditions will look like. So, we're altering the work conditions. So we're altering what our agreement is. And that's, both with our support staff, that's HEA. I mean, that's TAS, and our instructional staff, which is HEA. And they've been great. They've been very efficient and in terms of getting what their requested languages to us, which they think is in the best interest of their membership. I'm serving somewhat as a liaison to the school board and to our legal team, with trying to get language that kind of meets everyone's needs here, so that we can execute this plan in a safe way and one that works for everyone. So that's where we are with that. In terms of people looking for equity, we're trying to make sure that all the cohorts are getting the kind of access that they need. Is it going to be exactly equal? I think we talk about equity all the time. Making sure that equity doesn't always mean equal. So we're trying to make sure that the resources are to the people that need the most, but we're also trying to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And we're also trying to meet everyone's needs. And so, we'll hopefully be successful. In the event that we're not meeting your needs, again, you just need to advocate for yourself. I would say you reach out to your teacher first, through the principal, then through our office, central office, if you will. So, Mike, I don't know if you had any closing comments or thoughts, or either one of our two principals or any of our directors.
I just wanted to echo, the work of everyone, and all the smaller groups that have been working on, whether it be special ed or recess or transitioning or transportation. There's been a lot of people involved in the work, and it's because they all want the same thing. They all want to bring back students in a safe way, and make sure that we're getting those face-to-face instructional models. So I can't thank the people enough for the time and effort they've put in. in trying to do what's best for our students.
Mike, there's one last piece. I don't think we and I thank Jeff Dodd for reaching out right now, because this is what he does, right? So he's a detail guy. You know, our talking about our K-1-2 and the two options, being able to offer some sort of lunch. And so I think one of the things we have to figure out, whether it's a grab and go, some sort of bag, or if there is some sort of lunch, but that will be something we're offering, correct? That's
That is correct. So when students are, that's still dependent on the numbers too. So what we can provide and what they're either going to walk out with or what they're going to walk into, there'll be an opportunity for us to serve them meals.
But in any event, parents can count on a lunch, whether it's grab and go or something in building, right?
Yes.
I just speak this real quickly. I know other schools that have gone to this half-day model. Basically, the morning children would bring home a lunch, and then the afternoon children would also bring home a lunch that they could have the following day. So we're going to have to structure with our food service to provide that. This also may increase our opportunity for getting more students involved with our breakfast program. So there's some little hidden gems that are here.
Okay, that is the update. Ms. Parnell.
Sorry, I was stuck on mute. Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to open this up to school board questions. Throw your hand up, yell if you're not on screen, so that we can ask some questions.
I have questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Sweeney.
Who else could go first if they'd like? Because I think I went first last time.
How about this? I'll do a follow-up real quick on the meals program, since it was just discussed. So obviously our middle schoolers who are going to be in school for the full days that they're there, each cohort, and third and fourth. So we're still going to have the lunch program for our virtual students. So certainly cohort C, possibly cohort D. We're going to continue doing, I would assume, what we're kind of doing now, where they have the opportunity to get lunch as a pickup option, I think is what is available right now.
Yep. So that model will continue the same way, and we'll work with Fresh Picks, who's done a phenomenal job in regards to timing it so that they don't have to come every day. They can do the same that we've been doing, pick up Monday to get through Monday, Tuesday, pick up again Wednesday. So that will continue throughout the remainder of the school year.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my only question on that. So Jim, if you want to go ahead, go ahead.
You might regret it because I have a lot of questions. I just wanted to follow, thanks for the lunch. That ticks off one of my questions. But as far as I know, Mr. Flynn, cohort D can participate in lunches, correct?
Yep. Every student will, once the decision is made, whether A, B, C, or D, the way to access your lunch program will be delivered from the buildings directly to those families, whether it be it's a sign up, which we've been doing in the past, or once you do it once, they just plan and prepare for the remainder of the time.
Great. All right, here we go. Starting on 11/2, are we definitely, if everything goes well, because voting the next day, are we going to be able to get in the building if let's say voting goes until 11 o'clock at night and counting ballots? I don't know. Should we be looking at starting on the 4th or the 5th? Not that I'm trying to extend it, but I'm just trying to think about some crazy voting situation. Are we still going to be able to get in the building?
Yeah, so we've actually anticipated, I don't know if I anticipated those circumstances, but we wanted to anticipate anything that could occur. We still felt as though that was a good start date because of the abnormalities of the weekly schedules. It would still be a 4-day week. Mr. Mackey is already ahead of that in regards to the planning with ServPro and the areas that they will be accessing first, as well as Ms. Denola and Ms. Joseph have already discussed. If it is necessary, students would be relocated for that morning. the last time they came in, they were done well before students would be arriving. And even though there may be more area, they've mentioned possibly beginning earlier. So all of those details are prepared if necessary. And we still felt as a team that it would be beneficial to begin to get that first day in on that week.
Oh, great, great. When will cohort C, or I guess anybody, when will we start hearing about teacher changes? Like your
So-
teacher won't be able to support cohort C, you had this teacher and now it changes. Like, when do you think all these kids might start figuring out their schedule, not their
So-
schedule, but their teachers?
Sure. So that's it's a little bit twofold. One will obviously be families who may have evaluated their selection. So
Right.
we'll be redistributing a new selection sheet tomorrow. On that sheet, you'll see cohort AB. You'll see cohort AB, then you'll see C, and then you'll also see D, as well as we need to get firmer numbers on transportation. We sent one out previously, but we're gonna send it out all in one to confirm some of those numbers. Once those come in, I know Mr. Collins has told me repeatedly that the sooner the better. That's when that communication will come out from central school in regards to if there needs to be a reassignment or not. At the middle school, I think you'll tend to see a little bit less of that. The way we've been planning the schedule, we anticipate being able to schedule teachers to continue working with those students. It's hard to describe, but essentially teachers teach 5 or 6 classes a day. And as you saw on that slide, every other day we anticipate scheduling that teacher to teach virtually from school so that the kids can stay on team with their peers. And then when I say it's twofold, the second part of reassignments is what Dr. Metzler mentioned there on the end in regards to human resources and staffing. We're trying to figure out all the people that will be available or may not be available. And those should be, we feel pretty good about that information coming out before let's say, if the survey's open tomorrow and Thursday, probably by Monday and Tuesday of next week.
Okay, great. For HCS grades 3 and 4 and HMS, what does Friday look like? So if you're cohort A and B, will you then be in class with the C kids? Will it revert to the model that we're in now? Or will C kids stay with their teachers? And who will the A and B kids go with on Friday?
At the middle school, we see it as the entire class will be together, not cohort A or B, but A and B together. So they will be together.
And C on Friday? Or they're going to stick with their teacher?
So that's where middle school, as I said, middle school, they'll end up being on team with the rest of their peers if the way the schedule is going to play out. More specifically to the central school, you'll have the cohort C will now become its own cohort. So they will be virtual with their teacher on Friday, whereas the A and B will be combined to join their in-person instructor.
Well, hold on, let me just go back to that. So
Yep.
in middle school on Friday, say you're cohort C and say you had a teacher change because that teacher is now going to teach in school. On Friday, will the C kids be by themselves within, let's say grade 6, I'm picking grade 6. Will the C kids be by themselves with their new teacher, and A and B will be with other teachers on Friday, or will they all be merged together into a class?
So,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I'm trying to cohorts at the middle school model, A and B will have 2 days in, 2 days out, and on Friday, their middle school's schedule, students' schedules, will be a combined A, B, and C because they will all be on team.
So on Friday, someone could get a teacher change again.
Nope, you'll be
No.
on team. Yeah, so I know.
All right, that's all right. All right, I get it because you were telling me about how there's less movement at the middle. It's easier at the middle school because there's all these little blocks that could be arranged. But in central school, because they're taught by one teacher, you can't. Okay. I
Right,
know
in
what you-
middle school, our kids have up to 7 teachers a day.
Okay. So at central school on Friday, the virtual learning day, is it A, B, and C together, or is it A and B with a teacher and C with their, let's call it their new teacher if that happens?
The best way I can describe it at the central school is, I'll take the third grade as an example. We're anticipating that right now we have 5 classrooms with 5 teachers. Based upon the numbers that I've seen, one of those teachers will end up being a virtual teacher, which means Monday through Friday, they're with their virtual teacher if they're in cohort C. If they're in cohort A or B, that means on Monday and Tuesday, they're with their teacher. And then the other half of their class is with their teacher on Wednesday and Thursday. And on Friday, all of the children with that third grade teacher get together. So there doesn't end up being crossover in the same way. The middle school, because they have multiple teachers, creates a different dynamic. So once we shift children at the central school, their classroom will be the same thing always for cohort C, and it will always be the same for A or B. Basically, we just take the classroom and split it in half.
Okay, okay. My next question was, I'm just looking at like anticipated class size for HDS grade 3, because that's the highest. Will there be one teacher for 19 kids, do you think, or?
That's the case right now. We have one teacher for 19 kids, 20 kids. Class size in grade 3, our policy says we go up to 22, 23 within our comfort range. And actually that's where we are right now. I think the biggest dynamic that will shift with class size in our district is if families determine they want to send their child back to school because they've withdrawn them. So that may create some shifting of students, particularly in K1 and 2. And again, that's a chapter to yet be written. But we're going to develop based on the 450 kids that we have at school right now. We'll get them into classrooms. We'll move them around appropriately. I've already started it, anticipating we're ready to move forward. And I want to see what the parents put in for their request for cohort C. And then I'm waiting for what HR can work with through the administration. I'm ready to go. So it's just, I need some data, and then we'll be ready for whenever you guys say we're ready to go, which I'm hoping for November 2nd.
Okay, great. The 2 weeks after Christmas, and if COVID pops up and we have to shut down for a week, 2 weeks, I don't know. What model are we going to use for HCS and HMS? Are we going to go to the model now, or A and what would it be, A, B, and C, or would we just go back to the model now, or what? Just trying to figure it out.
I can take that, Mike. Yeah, we would pivot back to what we're currently doing, what you agreed to the first 5 weeks of school. That's our remote platform, which I believe we've established, and I think that's going to be a great asset for the school district, even after the pandemic, that we have a remote platform that we feel we can do.
Okay.
I want to add one little detail about the central school about this. The only thing that would look a little bit different is the delivery from the classroom teacher would look different, because we're basically reassigning some of our students to a different classroom teacher. I'm not anticipating a great deal, but some students will have a different teacher, but they will deliver the product that we're delivering now.
That makes sense. It's the same model, just different delivery. Also, in the midst of your questions, if I could, because I think this is probably driving everybody crazy. They're looking at a slide, and they're looking at, we have 5 core classes. We don't have 6. So it goes 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there is not a core 3 missing. There's only 5 core classes. And I had a few people reach out to point that out, and I've confirmed that that's a typo, right, Mr. Flynn?
That is correct. So we have ELA, writing, math, science, and social studies. So 5 core classes on the example slide we showed of grade 5.
Are there, when it comes to, you know, the back end of the house, are there any high flyers still open? Like there was one room that had an exchange rate
Oh,
that was a little off, and you
yeah.
talked about portable sinks upstairs. How are we, you know, a general high level, anything that still needs to be ticked off that list?
Mr. Mackey, do you want to speak to it or me? It's up to you. I know you, HVAC. I'll speak to it. So HVAC, we've continued to be working with our HVAC company in regards to that room in which there was no exchange. The HVAC, when they did the testing, they actually located the exchange. So that number that was, I think it was I mean, someone can correct me, I think it was 0.69, something 0.63. Even though we're not retesting it in regards to what they evaluated, they said that number would go upwards of 1.4 or 1.5, which would put it at normal with the rest of them now. It was really a miss. Jeff, help me out. I know I see you unmute
Sorry, yeah,
yourself.
it was, afterwards, we ended up finding the exhaust vent. It was behind a water heater in that room. So I couldn't find it because somebody had put the water heater in front of it. So once we found it, we were able to get to it, clean it out. And like Mr. Flynn said, it should be, it's running fully operable right now. So we're in good standing in that room.
Great, thank you. Mike Flynn, could you, what's the status with the Chromebooks that didn't come in yet, or did they come in? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so as I said, I have a standing meeting on Mondays and Fridays with our supplier. As of yesterday, the anticipated, and then I say this, the anticipated ship was by the end of this week, which means that's when the manufacturer ships it to the supplier, and then the supplier will turn it around to us. As I said, it's a Monday, Friday standing meeting, so I will have more information on Friday with that information.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the whole K-2 bringing those kids in. The social emotional piece is super important right now. Definitely reaching out to cohort D for whatever they need is fantastic. And, you know, being sensitive to the staffing issues and who may or may not be able to come in and not, you know, treating anybody and kicking anybody to the curb. So thank you for the presentation. I'm done. Thank you, everybody, for letting me ask those questions.
Thank you, Jim. Board members, additional questions?
Yep, I've got a few.
Okay, go ahead, David.
Yep, start custodial services. I know we talked about it at the last meeting, but just to bring it up, you know, with talking to Mr. Mackey, we don't have the additional 2 custodial services that we put out there for temp positions. Is that going to prohibit anything with the cleaning, the schedule that we had talked about in previous meetings, Dr. Mitzler?
I think, Jeff Dowd, do you want to jump in here on this in terms of the custodial services?
I think we'll make do with what we have, and I know Jeff Mackey is on the call as well. I think that we are certainly making do with what it is with what we have right now, and having multiple custodians on in the middle of the day will help us with that AM PM shift over anyway, change over as well. So I think that if we can find, and I think there have been a suggestion perhaps to post it as a part-time position as well. Maybe that would attract more people, more candidates. That'd be helpful, and hopefully we can meet that need. I don't think it'll be a problem to get it done, but it would be a lot easier to get it done with a little bit of additional assistance. So.
And I would imagine Jeff will have an opportunity, Jeff Mackey, to debrief, you know, with his staff, you know, because we have a pretty good idea what the work's going to look like. But you know, once they're doing the work, you know, and any adjustments, we need to make sure that we're getting things done. So I think that will be an important part of just touching base with the staff to see kind of what the workload looks like, and if additional support will be needed.
Okay, so we may not need those after all.
Well, I you know, on the front end, I believe, you know, we're planning that we need them, but you know, again, I guess we're gonna have to see, well, you know, how much is needed as we move forward. So I think, you know, I guess either Jeff could probably speak to that, but you know, you're asking me, my recommendation I would say I believe we're going to need them, but how they're used is entirely up to Jeff Mackey and you know, in terms of getting the cleaning and the work done.
Okay. Thank you. Next one is the cohort C, just going to that. The numbers that you showed were just estimates based on feedback. It's not the target number. Is that correct?
Those are the numbers that came in the last survey. I mean, we'll see what we get based on that. Those were accurate. The other numbers were
Correct.
high-end estimates based on people that actually selected in person and people that were undecided and said they wanted to wait and see what the presentation looked like tonight.
Yep. But if those were the numbers we got, if those numbers, some people had said, oh, I like what was presented, how it's going to go for hybrid, and they elect for their children to go hybrid, we could have an issue with spacing.
I believe that this is a plan that we can execute unless there was some sort of crazy shift.
Okay.
I'm saying if it's, I mean, obviously we operate with a plus or minus, looking either way. Now you would say, oh, well, you thought 80% would work. Obviously there was some other criteria that made that 80%, 75%, 3 feet, 6 feet with a mask, without a, that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Starts to get tricky. We know exactly how many people can fit. And like I said earlier, I think both of our principals are prepared to be creative with space. But I think the current plan, we have ample classroom space to get this done. I don't know how much of a shift we'll get, because those were all people that were willing to come back full time. Maybe some of the remote crowd will be interested in the hybrid, but I don't believe it'll be significant enough to have to change a plan.
Okay. And just going with that, Dr. Messler, so we didn't hear in this plan, but I'm assuming it's the same as last week where everybody's required to wear a mask, 6 feet, hallways will have one direction. We're still looking at the plexiglass, having all the different stations. Kids will stay in a room, teachers will move. Is that all still part of this plan?
All of the safety precautions that you heard are in place. The only pause, I would say, we have an MOU that we need to get done, and I think that could impact the plan. That could impact some of the decisions that we have to make once that's ratified by both the school board and the unions as a change in working environment. So I think we're optimistic, but again, all those safety precautions are in place.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, clarify that the middle school, after what we experienced last week, we feel that we can do it safely and appropriately, have the students transition between classes rather than being in the middle school in their one class the whole time.
Okay. A few more questions. Loss of internet. We're going to have kids that are going to be remote, hybrid. We're coming up on the winter season, snow, just people just in general that lose their internet service. We actually got an email just a little bit ago about a parent that they lost internet for a day. What is the process that parents should follow if those things happen? If it's not a school, town-wide snow, everybody loses power.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. We've been, and I'll continue to say, our student service team has been on top of those things, but more specifically to your question, always reach out to Mr. Collins or Mr. Nola. They're the first point of contact, and then they are delivering the information to whether it be myself in my tech department team or whether it is student services. We've been problem solving with several families. The team and the way they're able to help. Sometimes their helpline, is your router located here or there. We've been working with those families. So to answer it specifically, please contact the building principals first, and then they will send it in the right direction.
Okay.
Let me and Dave, if I could, I was with Dr. Powers in the sending towns. We had a lengthy discussion about what we used to do for blizzard bags. Blizzard bags will look different now. But then, obviously we started talking about, okay, now when power is out or internet is out or Wi-Fi is down, not just for in Hampstead, but if teachers are trying to work from home,
right,
and power could be out in Nashua. So I think that becomes almost like a traditional snow day in a lot of ways if people get knocked out. And so if it's one household, that's one thing. But if areas get knocked out, we may just have to have, for the remote kids, it would be almost like a traditional snow day, if you will, because they won't have access. And we're asking people to be patient because we could have great Wi-Fi here, but just say somebody works and lives in Nashua, where that particular teacher's power gets knocked down, and they're trying to teach from home. So I think there's going to have to be some, we're going to have going to have to do a great job communicating. We're also going to have to be patient and flexible with one another in the event that, we have internet or Wi-Fi issues.
Thank you. Nursing staff, I know we had talked about that we're hiring nurses. Are they in place and ready for the November 2nd already, or is that still work in progress? Additional, sorry, not just nurse staff, but the additional nursing staff?
Are you referring to the LNAs?
The LNAs, yes.
I believe we're in the, well, I'll let Jeff Dow talk in terms of the postings and the recruitment and the hiring process. Where are we in that process, Jeff?
So we are ready to post. We have just a couple still clarifying points to get out of the way, but I think we'll see the posting out there in the next day or so. So if anyone who's interested, certainly I will put a shameless plug out there to have them check in and submit an application.
Okay. Thank you.
We would work quickly, Dave, to get them on board. It's just there's Jeff doesn't want to get into the issues here. We have some issues about where they fall, what category, and those sorts of things. But we're working that out. But they will get posted. We'll recruit and we'll work out the details. But they'll be onboarded quickly. I do believe if we have applicants, we'll have them for the first day of students back in person.
Okay. Just a couple more questions of the status quo before I have questions about the going forward. Cohort D, there was a line on there that said student services. Can you explain what that means to myself, the other board members? Just give me some examples of where you're seeing that there'd be student services offered.
Well, it really comes down to relationships. So the student services through the guidance counselor, social worker, reach out to the building principal, and familiarity with the building. I think our cohort D folks are not, won't be people that are unfamiliar with the actual staff in the building. So they'll be treated just like cohort C or cohort A or cohort B in terms of, what they could reach out and ask for. Now, what does that mean? Obviously that's specific in terms of what a family, if they're struggling in any way, shape or form. I think that's a private conversation and they certainly can, ask for whatever help, and we'll do what we can to support that family, whatever they're looking for. So, that's a wide range, from, academic difficulties to social emotional issues. Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody that chooses cohort D, there is a number of options. Best thing is to reach out to the principals.
Correct. They are still part of our community,
Yep.
and obviously our community. They're still part of our school community,
Right.
and will be treated at the school as just like another student that's enrolled at the school. They're just choosing to teach them themselves with our support. And so, what those supports look like, again, I think the specificity of what they'd be looking for, I think, is really depends on the situation. But I think our schools will. They're not going to be isolated. They're not abandoned. They're still part of the district and they're still part of us. They're just doing this a little bit. They're just managing this pandemic option a little bit differently than perhaps other families. That's all.
And
Okay.
Mr. Smith, may I just address that a little bit?
Yeah,
Is
please,
that
Ms. Nola.
one of the things that makes Hampstead so incredibly special is that our staff, regardless of gen ed, special ed, UA, core, our special services, once we have that child in our sites, regardless of where they go, even when they transition to another community, we are constantly making sure that that child is okay, and that the services that we would just extend out of community and caring would continue to follow that child regardless of the path that they and their families choose. And that's our privilege and our honor, and that's something we take really, really seriously. That's where you have the school counselors doing these home visits in the past 4 weeks, showing up the doorsteps with a social worker, with a steak and cheese sub, and we will not write off anyone regardless of their choice.
Okay.
I
Thank
just
you for
want to
that.
assure you that.
And Dave, just
Thank
take it a step further, you can think if they, in the event they were able to have winter sports or spring sports, if we're still in the same situation, they'd have access to those programs, clubs, activities, dance. If we were able to do any of those sorts of things down the road, I'm not sure what we'll be able to do or not do. The NHAA voted today to have winter sports. So I would imagine the middle school will be looking at something similar. We'll have to talk more about that as time goes on. They weren't going to have any contests until into January, not practicing, it's not starting until the middle of December. So I think that's a conversation that we'll need to have about sports. But we do want to offer activities in a safe way to our kids. Back to your original question, cohort D students would have access to those activities as well.
Okay. Only a couple more on the hybrid model. I know there's a lot I'm asking. Still on the same decision that the before school, after school care will not happen immediately. Is that true?
That's true. We're going to revisit that in January, and I apologize to families that really count on that. But I think in order to do this safely, outside groups, we weren't having them in, whether to rent the space or even to offer services this time. Perhaps post, when we're back in January, is something we can take a look at. But I think this is going to be a lot of work for our staff, a lot of cleaning, a lot of, just to make sure that we're able to guarantee to families that this is safe. I think that weakens our ability to do that quite a bit. We'll probably know more about what we can and can't do once we get into January. It's not over forever, but I think for now we want to start with this model and do this well.
Okay. Actually, that goes right into my last question on the hybrid piece of it is, and you started talking at the beginning, Dr. Metzler, about your philosophy is, it hasn't changed. That hybrid model, in your opinion, was the worst of the three options because of the amount of work on the teachers, still not getting the kids in, 5 days a week, and a plethora of other reasons that, you stated. I'm not saying your philosophy has changed. What are we doing so that we can, can you speak a little bit more about some of the more details of how we're, avoiding the pitfalls of other schools that have gone into hybrid?
Well, I don't, obviously I've seen quite a few plans, probably just like everybody, and looked, our plan is it unique? Well, it's Hampstead. So it could be considered unique. It's not the same as everyone else's. It might have some similar components to it. I think the 6 feet is a really safe distance. I know some other places are at 3 feet. I think I trust that our administrative staff at the building level, I trust that our teaching staff and our support staff are going to do all the things. There's no guarantees. If the virus is in your school or people are susceptible to it. So it's one of those things. But I think we've learned quite a bit. I'll stand by the fact that my hope was to get everybody back in person and hope that there was a remote percentage that we could do. But unfortunately, the conditions and the numbers just don't allow it. So short of staying completely remote, I had to be convinced this is safe. I believe it's safe. I wouldn't be recommending it this evening. I thought it was the next best option of getting students back to school. Certainly with Principal Collins, in terms of our youngest learners, that's a priority. Our most at risk, we got them in right away. But so I wouldn't say the philosophy has changed at all. It's not my it's not certainly not my favorite plan. I mean, obviously the goal was to get everybody back in person as soon as possible, but as safely as possible. So there is some criteria that has made that difficult. So I believe this is the next best option, other than if we stayed fully remote, but we can't stay fully remote forever. So I think this is probably the next best step. I'm as disappointed as many other people are. I was hoping we could get back 5 days a week in person to a new normal, and I haven't lost hope. My hope is that we're still able to do that in the near future. How long is that going to take? What kind of course is this pandemic going to take? There's so many unknowns. Criteria changes so quickly. But what hasn't changed is we want to do it safely. And so this is our next best option.
Thank you. I might have a couple other questions, Caitlin, but I wanted to, I've asked for a while, so thank you for your patience, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from board members? Go ahead, Megan.
So just a couple. So it sounds like we'll be sending out a survey to parents tomorrow, hoping for their feedback on Thursday. Just the expectation is that whatever our families decide on Thursday is what they will be locked in for through the end of the second quarter. Is that correct?
Excuse me, you will still have an opportunity to reevaluate it if needed. We've been saying up to the 28th, but as the administrative staff has mentioned, the earlier the better. So we feel as though surveying parents tomorrow will give us an idea of any adjustments that people may be doing since the presentations and the reevaluation of their family. But certainly between this week and next week, if there are any changes, we ask that you reach out to the building principal at that time and tell us that you are changing your decision. That was all going to be coming out in the email tomorrow on those next steps.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about the October 28th.
Yeah, Megan, if I could just a little bit more on that. Now, if you have a qualifying event, now what's a qualifying event? If you make a selection and you're into this 2-3 weeks and something in your life changes where you needed us to look at this on an individual basis and make some sort of shift from D to C, from C to A, of course, on an individual, we just won't be able to make wholesale changes in the middle of planning because of staffing. But I want people to be comfortable case by case. If you have some sort of qualifying event, reach out to the building, they'll assess it case by case. And if somebody needed to make a change, they'll see what they can do. Again, case by case with qualifying events. What are the qualifying events? Those are very personal. I'd leave that up to the families and the building principals to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you. I did want to just acknowledge Mr. Collins, to say I just really appreciate all the effort that went into trying to get planning to get our younger learners back into the schools for 5 days a week. So thank you for that. It sounds like it was a nightmare. The hybrid schedules, they confuse me in general. So, and I know Mr. Flynn, you went through this, but just can you confirm for me, in regards to cohort A and B, is there going to be consistency between, and I think you answered this question, I just didn't understand the answer. Is there going to be consistency between the teachers that are teaching the virtual and in person? So a student will have the same math teacher for hybrid and for in person.
Yes, so the goal of the middle school is to maintain their schedule with their team at their grade level. So if you are I'm trying to pick a grade here, I'll pick 8th grade because I know Miss Wallach. If you choose cohort C, you will still have Miss Wallach as math. If you are in A and B, you will still have Miss Wallach in math. That is the job of the middle school administrative team, to schedule that class so that Miss Wallach is still delivering the math instructionally to her cohort C. It's easier at the middle school, as we described, because there's multiple classes a day. So it allows us for that flexibility to plan that instructional period for Miss Wallach to deliver to cohort C at that time. So does that help clarify? I think that made it a little bit easier. Okay,
it does. Perfect.
Right.
Thank you. I think I have one more point for clarification. And I think this is probably obvious through the presentation, but in regards to cohort C, it looks like there will be 3 full days of virtual learning, meaning direct learning. Therefore, there's no consideration of the personalized learning period of time.
I would say no to that, and I don't mean it that way. But in order for us to incorporate all of the direct instruction with the in-person teaching and allowing that virtual period to happen, that's the way it was initially drawn out. But as we get into the details of the scheduling, we will still be offering those periods of WIN or RTI or however it may be. So they'll still be receiving all of those It's not going to fall as cleanly as it would if you were in A or B.
Okay.
And can I just add something, Mrs. Malcolm? And that is the journey right now of who the people are, and thus, with parents trying to give us their information via the survey of which they are going to participate in, whether it's A, B, C, or D. It's hard. It's like a moving target. We just need to know who the students are. We need to know who the staff are, who is the most important piece right now. And once we have that, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I do have one more question, but I'm afraid to ask it. I think I will cause some eyes to roll. I know we're focused on getting our kids back to school, and we feel that this is the best plan. I am wondering if we have a strategy to continue efforts in trying to get to phase 3. I'm sorry for asking the question. I just couldn't help myself.
It was one of mine I was going to be asking Megan too, so I'm glad you asked it and not me, so now I can blame you.
Yeah, phase 3, I mean, I'm just going to state the obvious too. Phase 3 will be really dependent on what the MOU looks like and what we can and can't do. If there are conditions in the MOU that prohibit us from going to phase 3, we won't be going to phase 3 without a new MOU. That's as clear as it could be. We won't have an instructional staff to deliver any instruction.
Can I piggyback on that one, Megan? Just to, I know I haven't seen the MOU. Is there anything that you see from what, and I don't know how much you can speak to this, Dr. Metzler, on the MOU that we're going to review eventually that could prohibit us from even going to the hybrid model?
I really can't speak to that. It's it's agreement between the school board and the unions. I've done my job in terms of getting being the liaison to get that into the board's hands. The board's working on it with legal, and those agreements change very little in some instances and a lot in others. So, it depends on what the final product looks like. I can't talk about a product that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, I can, David, I'd like to be able to answer your question a little bit better. And, we are constrained at the moment with what I can update on because it's a working document. It's not public record at this point. As you mentioned, you will get updates, and pretty extensively is the plan. I'm constrained. I can't say what I would like to say. I will be able to update the board in a different setting. I can update the board in non-public. I can say that part.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, but I don't know if Megan's done, so I don't want to jump in front of her.
I saved the best for last.
Okay. All right. So my question comes down to basically the information that we're getting out to parents as far as making choices. So survey is going to go out tomorrow. It'll be open for a couple days. I'm assuming the email is going to be pretty comprehensive because while we have a lot of people on this Zoom meeting, there are certainly going to be parents who aren't watching. And I know that sometimes there is a lag between getting the videos up or getting them over to cable, et cetera. That's just how this works. That's to be expected. But can we just talk about how we're going to get this full information?
So I anticipated attaching tonight's presentation to the email as the PowerPoint. And then in the email, if you have any questions or concerns, I was going to drive that to the building principals because they're more specific to their plans. And then obviously, as we've mentioned before, if those answers aren't sufficient, you can always contact Dr. Metzler or myself to certainly help guide you in your choice and decision.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions they want to ask. David, I think you said you had.
Yeah, I got, if, I don't know, Karen, did you have anything that, I don't want to take over all this. I just have some just clarifying understandings.
No, I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Is there any reason, Dr. Metzler, for the remote days that are, cohort A versus cohort B, why the remote children couldn't, use webinar of some sort, Zoom, whatever, and they just be taught 5 days a week and they see the instructional from the teacher? Does that make sense?
Again, you're talking about working conditions that'll be embedded in an MOU, and I can't speak about a document that has not been approved or ratified yet by either the union or the school board.
Okay, so it's not, if during the MOU process, so let me, if during the MOU process and the board wanted to suggest there is 5 days of learning, it's that the 2 days remote, they're doing it from their homes. That's something we could support in the school as far as technology and infrastructure.
I'd leave that to Mr. Flynn as far as whether or not, it's something that we could support in terms of technology and infrastructure. But, do
Yeah,
I?
I'm going to jump in front of Dr. Metzler here. He can't answer this question yet. Mr. Flynn, if you want to answer the technology piece, please go ahead.
Yep. So, yes, simple answer is yes. What the board supported last year in our wireless infrastructure upgrade, we are well prepared for those types of circumstances.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is about the amount of learning the children have received to date. We have state regulations that say we need X amount of hours. If we look at the number of instruction hours with teachers versus at home, to me, and in looking at my daughters and other friends, their children's like kind of classroom setting, it seems that we're not up to that instructional hours, but that may just be from the outsider's perspective in. Can you speak to this, Dr. Metzler, about, if we're right now, we're only getting 2 days of core classes, of certain core classes, how that all adds up so that we do have enough hours?
Well, just to make it really simple, all the hours count, so, I know people are trying to count jelly beans here and think certain things count and certain things don't count. All the hours count, regardless of how we do it. The waiver by the DOE, we're fine. We're more than fine, actually.
Okay, and that's still, and I'm just making sure it's still with, the 2 weeks at the beginning of September, the 1 week we have coming up, vacations, all that, when we're still able to hit those hours.
Planning counts, remote counts, virtual counts, it all counts. All the hours count, no matter how we do it.
Okay.
So that's not an accurate statement when people say that we're not meeting the hours, not even close to being accurate. That's
Yep.
when I start to talk about being conveniently misinformed, that's being conveniently misinformed. That's not accurate.
Right, which is why asking the question, I know I've heard it a number of times, and I know I couldn't give a good answer for that. So thank you for the answer.
Sure.
And that's what I got, Caitlin.
Okay, Mike, Jim Sweeney. I don't know if it's an education piece for the parents or not. I mean, I'm not the most tech guy, but I am aware of creating a mobile hotspot if there was an internet problem in my house that my kids can hop on. And I'll just say another thing. I happen to have Fairpoint, and I'm not plugging them, but that type of internet service, that low voltage that they put on their line, if your line doesn't fall down and your power's out and you have a generator, you can actually still have internet. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to make people aware of, like, if they have different services, maybe it's not the best one to have if your kids are remote, something that's less unstable, whether it's satellite, or even the opportunity to create a hotspot instead of leaving your home and trying to find a Dunkin' Donuts, or now that the library is closed, you could, most people have cell phones, they can actually create a hotspot for their children. I don't know if there's opportunity for us to have an education piece for the parents on, I don't know, just wondering.
No, I appreciate the question, and we've been handling those. And as Ms. Denola mentioned, not just in regards to the SEL piece, but more about the technology piece. Through the advisory program, a lot of those issues are reported, and then we have our own internal systems that we have in place in which teachers are submitting tickets specifically to spotty video, spotty sound, camera not working, so forth and so on. And our team has done a great job of contacting those families. We have at least 2 meetings a day, it seems like recently. We're on the phone, problem solving. The hotspot is one of the other scenarios we've been playing. A lot of people are now realizing with the amount of devices that are on at the same time during the day has an impact on their wireless infrastructure within their house. So, I mean, personally in my own house, sometimes I will set my 2 homeschoolers on their own hotspots so that they're not draining from me when I'm working. So we've been working through all that with families on a case-by-case basis to make sure that we're supporting those through those problems.
Thank you.
Caitlin?
Yes.
I just want to go back to something, the question about hours, something that I think Dr. Metzler just didn't mention, that the Department of Education has given school districts a lot of flexibility now in the way we count hours in this environment. And that in the past, we usually count days, and we end up having way too many hours in a normal year. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue.
Thank you. Okay, final call for questions or comments. Okay, I do not see anything. So on that note, am going to ask for a motion to accept the recommendation to move to phase 2 as presented this evening.
So moved.
Okay, thanks. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any final discussion or questions before we move to a vote? Okay, seeing none. Melissa, will you please call the roll vote?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
and Mrs. Yusenka.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor?
Okay, thank you. And thank you to administrators, teachers, task force, staff, students for your input, and parents and families for your input as well. We do read the feedback from the emails. We do answer questions when they're posed. We had a lot of emails this week. I did not get back to everybody, but all were read and considered. And really the work that has gone into it, into this, I appreciate it. We appreciate it. That is our main agenda item for this evening. Dr. Metzler, unless you have a personnel report, I know it's technically on there.
I had a personnel report, but we have that's going to need to be tabled.
Okay.
We have a position that we're looking to fill, but there's been situation that has forced us to table it for this meeting. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. With that in mind, I would like to ask for a motion to enter non-public under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2, both C and L for reputation and for legal.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Melissa, will you please poll the board?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. It's 9:35.
Okay, thank you.
did you have a plan as to how we were going to do it to this tonight?
Yeah, I